My guest for episode 3 of Wild Minds is Dr. Susan Tomlinson. Dr. Tomlinson has a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Studio Art and a Master of Science and PhD in Geology from Texas Tech University. She teaches interdisciplinary studies in nature and the arts as part of the Texas Tech University Honors College's Environment and the Humanities program. She's the author of How to Keep a Naturalist's Notebook, a book she developed for use in her own class that introduces students to drawing and writing about their experiences with nature. And she's currently working on a book under contract for botanical paintings featuring cotton. She also spends a lot of time gardening, biking, and carving canoe paddles. In her spare time, she enjoys being with her husband, dogs, and cats.
Talk about your book, how it got started and what you're doing.
Well, there was this call for paintings for an exhibition by the New York Botanical Garden, and I always get the name of the exhibition wrong. It was essentially Cultivating Diversity was the subtitle, and I could never remember the full title of it. The idea was to enter, it had to be a painting of something that was either an heirloom plant that was economically important, or the ancestor of an heirloom plant, or the wild ancestor of the heirloom plant, or whatever. And so it's a triennial, so every 3 years this particular exhibition goes on. And they have one now for, it's called Unsung Allies, and it's fungi and so on. I'm like, I live in Lubbock. I travel and I meet all these botanical artists, and they're like, I'm so fascinated with mushrooms, and I go, okay.
Yeah.
Like, I see them in the grocery store. And then oddly, at odd times that they suddenly grow and then disappear in my yard.
We grew up eating mushrooms, not those kind.
It's like, I know, but it's like, where are you going to, it's like, don't pick the ones here. Don't put them on your salad. So this was one of those triennials where the call, I look at it and I go, I got nothing. I don't think we grow anything. All we grow in Lubbock is cotton, and sorghum. So I just kind of put it out of my mind and didn't think about it. And then Carol Wooden, who's in charge of exhibitions for the American Society of Botanical Artists, saw me at a conference. She said, "Are you going to enter something?" And I said, there's not, I mean, at the time when I was growing proboscidea, devil's claw.
Okay.
I was doing a series of paintings on them. I said, "Do you think those would qualify?" And she goes, "Are they economically important?" I said, "Only to certain tribes who use them in basketry, but not otherwise, And she goes, "I don't know. You could ask the judges, And I was like, I don't know, So I just thought, I'm not going to worry about it. But I came home and I thought about it some more. And at the time my doubles tennis partner, her husband was a cotton researcher. And in the back of my mind, I'd remembered reading some newspaper articles many years ago about people growing cotton that produced colored lintz, like greens and browns and so on, that they would then weave as sort of natural fabrics. And I thought, well, maybe Craig, her husband, knows somebody I could get in touch with. So I told her about the project, and then she texted me back and she said, Craig said that the oldest known ancestor of cotton is growing in a greenhouse north of town.
Wow.
Like, I'm on it, because that counts as a wild ancestor,
Yeah.
right? And that was Texas A&M AgriLife, and I got in touch with them, and it just sort of opened up everything. And then they directed me to somebody who was doing cotton research here at Tech, and he had all of the ancestors of our modern cotton growing that he was doing genomic studies on. He invited me to come take a look at those, and he was very gracious about just letting me come in to this sweltering environment and drawing the cottons and so on.
Wow.
And he would let me harvest some of the bolls and some of the flowers and take them home and light them in the studio so I could get good lighting and so on. So out of that, I wound up painting 2 paintings, one that went into this show, which was herbaceum. And then from that, I thought, well, I've got bowls from all but one of the ancestors of cotton. And so I'm going to do all of the ancestors of Barbadens and hirsutum. So, because the story is like there were 2 related cottons that they have found from North Africa and the South Asia, and then cottons from Central America, and somehow these wound up producing hirsutum and barbidans. I don't have a background in genetics or whatever. So every time they start telling me this, I'm like, okay, I have no idea really what you just said, but I get it, kind of what you're saying. And then I had a bull Kirkii, which is the one that is putatively the earliest ancestor, they think, of all cotton. So I did this painting that was sort of a long frieze showing each of these, with the exception of Raymondii, which I couldn't find a bowl for it. But they have it out at Texas A&M Greenhouse, and this year they brought it into flower for me.
Wow.
And produced some bowls, and so that was really nice. So now I have that, but I didn't have it at the time of the painting. Yeah, so I'm gonna redo that, where I have like do a series that is the evolution of modern cottons. This is part of what I started to unravel, and it all started from this one thing, which is like, paint an heirloom plant, and it turns out that it just opened up this whole world. And not only that, but the plant is interesting to paint. You think, oh, a cotton boll is a cotton boll is a cotton boll.
Yeah.
And it's not true.
Your paintings actually draw attention to that. So is that why you're a botanical artist?
Well, that's why I'm doing this project. I became a botanical artist because first of all, I'm an artist and have been since 3 or 4 years old. And so I started taking painting lessons early on. I mean, early, like elementary school, I was taking private lessons because my grandmother kind of saw that I had some talent, and she was a self-taught artist. And she was the one who said to my parents, you need to enroll her in some kind of art lessons. So I started early. Until I went off to college, I was bound and determined to become a scientist, an oceanographer, because I was growing up in the desert. So anyway, I was just convinced I was going to be a scientist, and my dad kept saying, you're going to major in art, and I kept saying, I'm going to be a scientist. And I come from a family of teachers, and he'd say, you're going to be a teacher, and I'm like, I'll never be a teacher, and almost up until the day I went off school, I said, I'm going to be a scientist. And I went off school and majored in art. And at the time, which was the late 70s, early 80s, it was all conceptual art. I enjoyed art because I was good at rendering. There were some classes that, focused on drawing skills and painting skills, but very quickly it became all about the idea. And abstraction, and we were in the thick of the Louise Nevelson era and coming out of the Jackson Pollock era, and by the time I graduated, I wasn't doing anything like what I had wanted to do. And I also, they not so subtly beat it into you that's you don't want to be doing flower painting, and that's even what they call it, and they put it up like, oh, it shows skill, but it's just decorative, and there's all this, dripping sort of
representational versus
conceptual.
Right.
And you're supposed to be doing conceptual if you are any good at all. So I messed around for, I guess, 8 years or so trying to do conceptual art while I was also working as a draftsman. That's what they called them back then, for an oil company. And at some point I just thought, in order to get anywhere, and also at the same time I was starting to learn a little bit more about trying to get things into galleries and so on. And at some point I realized I just wasn't happy doing that. It was not what I thought I signed up for when I was interested in art. And yet here was, I had sort of been brainwashed into thinking that what I wanted to do was somehow not good. It was lesser and, to be derided kind of thing. And, and I thought, well, if it's all about big ideas, I just don't have any big ideas. I just don't. And I've been sort of faking having big ideas, and it just, so I just walked away from it. I just thought, I'm not an artist. And so then at the time I was working for an independent geologist, and I had always been, remember, I was foreshadowing I had always been interested in science, and I had grown up in the desert, and I'd been interested in rocks and all kinds of things. So he started teaching me about geology, and I thought, this is really interesting, and it's fun, and it's cool. And then the oil industry, as it often does, hit the skids, and everybody got laid off. And I thought, I'm going back to school, and I'm going to become a geologist. So I did that. I went to graduate school. I became a geologist.
And that's here, right?
Here. Cal Barnes called me on the phone and said, come on up and see the department. And I was like, I'm there. So I went up there, and then they gave me a teaching assistantship for support. And the first day in the classroom, I came out of there, and I thought, I'm going to be a teacher.
Dad was right.
Dad was right. I just loved it. And so I thought, I'm going to teach geology. I'm going to be a teacher. I'm going to get my PhD. But one thing led to another, and I met Walt and wound up staying here. And long story short, I wound up in the Honors College directing a degree program that, get this, blends the arts and the sciences. And as part of that, I would teach my students, we'd go out and I'd teach them how to identify plants and birds and teach them about the ecosystem and so on. And then I'd teach them how to journal about it, and I'd teach them how to draw.
If I could go back, I would so love to take that class.
Yeah. And so, but in the process of teaching them how to draw, sometimes I go, well, and I'd take their journal and I'd take their pencil and I'd start showing them, and then I wouldn't want to give it back, So it had sort of reawakened this joy of, drawing things representationally and the beautiful line. I'm sure you know what I mean when I say that. You just make this line, you go, oh, that was really good. That was just a beautiful line you made there, And so, look at that tree. And I would get up and I would sort of demonstrate the beautiful line of the tree to the students, and they'd all laugh at me. At some point, I started thinking that I need to do a better job of teaching them to draw plants, because my background was not in botany. I thought there must be somebody who teaches botanical art. I knew enough to know it's called botanical art. Well, as it turned out, botanical art was going through this sort of renaissance. It's a long traditional art form, but it's been undergoing this very modern, very contemporary renaissance. And I took a workshop from a woman named Margaret Best, Canadian artist, quite good, and really started to get into it. And then I took some private lessons with her via FaceTime. It was before Zoom. It was pre-Zoom. And which sounds like, oh, it's 20 minutes ago. So remember FaceTime? Oh man, that was so old school.
It was pre-pandemic.
I know. So anyway, so I took lessons, and then I found out about the American Society of Botanical Artists, and I started going to their conferences and taking workshops at their conferences, and just really got into it that way. So the botany that I have learned is strictly tied to the subject that I'm painting. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I've learned about plants is there are so many variations mm-hmm. on the same thing. In every new plant that I'm studying, there is always a what the hell is that moment? Because it's like I have never seen a structure like that. I can't tell what that is,
which is just, it's amazing to me, because to me that's proof that the science and the art are so intertwined.
Yeah, well, that's actually with the botanical art, that's a requirement.
Really?
Like when they judge for exhibitions, they have a botanist on the
I could see that. That makes sense to me. It
has to be botanically accurate, and that's actually one of the things that appeals to me.
Yeah.
About the genre is that
me too, yeah,
because finally I'm getting to be a kind of scientist, but I'm really just an artist. But it blends the science. It has to be scientifically accurate, and there's there are all these little controversies over whether something went a little too far, not pushing the boundaries of what botanical art is supposed to be.
Wouldn't you like to just be a fly on the wall with these judges With the botanist and the art judges. I mean, are they in the same room when they judge?
They are,
probably?
but I think actually the botanists and the art judges would probably be very much on the same page.
Yeah.
I mean, so it has these
I would
really
love to listen to that.
It has these really strict rules, but then within these really strict rules, the challenge is how do you now turn it into something that is elevated to the level of art?
Right.
Right. So something that is more than just a pretty picture, and you can hear, the vestigial derisiveness, something that is art.
Yeah.
Here's what I do, or this is what is important to me in my botanical art. When I'm doing it, I think a lot about sense of place. You have a sense of this, I'm sure. It's like our greens are brown.
Yeah.
The leaves on our plant look like they have been beaten up by the wind.
Yeah.
Because that's the environment they grow in.
Yep.
So you could grow you can grow cotton in Alabama. It can be the same species, same cultivar. It's going to look different than something that's growing in my alley.
Right.
Right? That's how I'm trying to elevate it to the next level, which is, can I capture my sense of place here? Which I frankly love for its harshness. And I love it that the people and the plants and the animals that survive here, we are tough. We are hard scrabble.
Yeah.
If you go out, because we had all that great rain, right, recently. So I rode my bike out to Lubbock Lake Landmark, and it reminded me of this essay in Texas Monthly that I read years and years ago, where a guy was talking about what rain means to West Texans. And he was saying that he had gone to visit his aunt in some small town like Big Lake or something like that. And she wasn't home. So you do as you do in a small town. He went next door to see, where's my aunt? Because everybody would know. And so he went next door, and they said, oh, she heard there was rain in the next county. So she drove over there to see it. And I thought, ever since I read that essay, I thought that sums it up. So I rode my bike out to Lubbock Lake Landmark because we had all that rain. I said, I got to see what it looks like. So I rode out there, and it's green.
Yeah.
It's just green. Of course, to somebody else, it would not look green.
Yeah.
But it's also, the green is not even as green as you would get somewhere else.
Yes.
But to me, it was like, oh my gosh, it's like a jungle here, you know.
Yeah.
It was so beautiful. And that is the subconscious thing I'm trying to capture in my botanical art. This is where I live.
Yeah.
And so when you look at one of my paintings, you might look at it and go, yeah, I guess I could see that. But what I want is somebody who lived here, just on some primordial, very innate level could look at it and go, I'm home when they look at that.
Right.
They just go, that's a painting from home.
Yeah.
Even if it's just a cotton bowl. It's like they just understand it in a way, and they may not understand why they understand it. And maybe that elevates it to art. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't
because
matter.
it's an interesting, that's my big idea. Right? It's not even that big an idea, because it's like sense of place.
Yeah.
And we all talk about that. But that is the thing that when I sit down to paint, that's what I'm trying to capture. So it's about the plant, yes. It's about the ability to render, yes. But it's about this deeper thing, which is I am trying to paint home. I talk about Lubbock as an ugly landscape. That's how people think of it. It's like, and I
guilty.
I thought long and hard about, like, how do you love an ugly landscape? And I think it's important to love ugly landscapes. Everything is so human centric. It's like, I'm only going to save you if you appeal to me, right?
Right.
And so I started sort of from that, but also from this sense of, the landscape inferiority complex. This has been a long time obsession of mine, which is, how do you love the ugly landscape? And more than that, as the more I thought about it, which is like, why do I think it's an ugly landscape? And, why is it important to love an ugly landscape? Number one, the ugly landscape needs your love because nobody else is going to take care of it, right? They're going to go take care of the mountains and the rivers and the oceans, and, but Lubbock,
Right.
Why would we take care of that?
Right.
You know? Well, it needs it because it is also an ecosystem. The plains are an ecosystem. The desert is an ecosystem. That's number one. Number two is it's only ugly because my vision is limited.
Yep.
Right? And so once you get to know it, you start to see, you know, you have those moments like being on the bicycle when I rode out there a day or two ago and I saw it's like, oh my gosh, I cannot imagine being anywhere else on earth that moment and being happier than seeing all these plants that are abiding for like 99% of the year until that moment when they spring to life. And I think of the prairie as a landscape that abides. It waits. It abides all of this harshness until the right moment, and then it's like there, you know? And when you think of it that way, it just, you know, for me, that really gives me a level of respect for it that is just, you know, stratospheric.
Okay, so I have to go to this next topic because I actually have a few subscribers who are longing for this episode just for this reason.
No, really?
Yes.
Oh, that's kind of actually a little bit scary.
Well, no,
pressure.
I think it confirms what you and I have talked about, that this topic is not discussed enough.
Oh,
and that's
right.
You know,
Yes, I know where you're going.
The female athlete, or even if you don't consider yourself an athlete, just staying active through perimenopause, pre-menopause, perimenopause, and post-menopause, and just how that affects our bodies
and our lives.
In addition to aging, like it's as a separate thing from just aging. You know, as a backpacker, last season, probably the last 2 seasons, but last season especially, I remember sitting in my tent and I was in so much pain. Inflammation everywhere. You had mentioned Dr. Stacy Sims, and I Googled her and I've read like all of her blog essays. And one of the first things she talks about is that when you're going through that transition, that your body is just an inflamed mess. Like you have so much more inflammation than normal because of that transition and the hormone fluctuation and all that. I'm like, I just had one of those aha moments.
I know.
I'm like, okay, this is why. Now what do I do about it?
I know. And that was the effect that she had on me too when I discovered her, because I knew, you know, there was something going on that wasn't just aging, you know, and I've been an athlete all my life. So it wasn't just like, oh, now you're older, so you're slower, you know, and then I would read all the wellness articles in the New York Times about aging, you know, and what you should be doing and what's supposed to work. And I would read, you know, books on cycling after 50 or running after 50, and they would work to some extent, but they were still missing something. There were just things going on that seemed like it was about more than just not being flexible or not having as much muscle mass or whatever. Here was my aha moment. I was, you know, last summer, I worked during the summer as the acting dean, and so I tried to get into the office early. So I would go out cycling before sunrise. And there are all these articles out there right now about fasted exercising and how that helps you lose weight and blah, 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 and how this is good and so on. And so I thought, well, this works out, you know, because I'll just ride my bike before breakfast, eat my breakfast, and go in. The whole time, and I was trying to ramp up my mileage, and I just couldn't get past sort of a base level. I was not only not progressing, my muscles always felt like they were just tissue that was just being torn apart, which was weird because I thought something's not right. And I was also not recovering very well. And I just thought, something's going on. I don't know what it is. And I don't know how I ran across Stacy Sims on the internet, obviously somewhere, but I got her book, the one that specifically dealt with menopause. And I can't remember the name of that. So anyway, my intuition was, this has to do with menopause. And so I saw that she had written 2 books.
One is Roar. And the other one is Next Level.
Next Level is the one. So Roar is about being a female athlete, you know, and how hormones affect your athletic performance and so on. And I was like, you know, I'm sort of past that.
Right.
I don't have hormones anymore. That was my attitude. And so I got Next Level and I was reading it. And the thing she was talking about just seemed like it was checking every box on things I was feeling and what was happening to me and so on. And one of the things she said in there was that these studies on fasted exercise are done on men.
Right.
And I thought, okay. And then she was talking about what's happening in terms the catabolic state that you enter into when you're exercising and how quickly you have to refuel with protein to stop that catabolic state. Because otherwise, essentially your body is robbing fuel from your muscle. So instead of riding fasted, I started eating breakfast before I'd ride, and then I would ride, and then I would immediately refuel with kind of a yogurt smoothie and whatever. Instant results. And it just really blew me away how quickly it just turned it around, just as one simple thing. So there's a lot in her book. And again, I'm not a biologist. I'm a geologist. I study rocks. And rocks don't have hormones. I was able to go through there and sort of pick out the things that I could tell applied to me and apply those. And they've been very helpful. But the takeaway message was, and it's what she says, which is women are not small men.
Right.
And not only that, but postmenopausal women are in a category all their own. And so now I'm actually a lot more cautious now when I read sort of those wellness articles. I now can recognize, like they'll say, a study of 30 men, and I go,
yeah, not for me.
Flip the page, because we are very different. A lot of my problems came down to just not having fuel. And that's something I've changed since reading her too, is like, I don't diet. It's like, no, fuel your workout.
The nutrition stuff also is something that I struggle with because, my nutrition has been bad for years.
I know. I'm like a junk food junkie.
Me too.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, okay, I probably should start thinking more seriously about what I'm putting into my body and how it's helping me or not helping me.
Yeah, and I think that's the key. So I've really tried to go from a mindset of, like, oh man, I'm 5 pounds over. I've got to restrict my diet or whatever. And not thinking about restricting my diet at all as much as I need a yogurt today. I need a banana. I need an apple. I need, these are the things I need.
Right.
And so just make sure you get those and then whatever, but also make sure you get those in the right timing. The thing that for me now has really become sacrosanct is fueling on the ride if it's over a certain number of minutes, and then also as soon as I get home, don't stop for go, get
That's
that.
one thing that she really, really does emphasize is the recovery is so different.
And it has helped me so much. That was something I was not paying attention to whatsoever is, the recovery and the nutritional recovery. Have you ever noticed, like with nutrition, I'm 66. And so in my lifetime, eggs were good and then eggs were bad and now eggs are good again. And wine was bad and then wine was good. Now wine is bad again. And, it's like, it's just like, whatever.
Yeah.
I know I should eat the rainbow. I shouldn't eat a lot of sugar. These are sort of the basics we all can agree on, right? The rest of it, it changes from year to year, it seems like. I'm not telling any menopausal woman any news when I say that menopause fucks up your sleep. And there is not enough study on how much it's messing shit up.
Yeah.
Because...
Can I keep that in there?
Yeah, you keep that in there. Because it just does. We need more understanding. When you consider the very small subset that we are of the general population, A, we're women, that's a subset. B, we're menopausal women, that's a subset. C, we're athletic menopausal women who want to keep a level of performance.
Yeah.
Right? There's not research money for us. And that's the bottom line, is there is not research money for us. When I first started going through menopause, and I went through menopause early, like 40. When I first started going through it, and I would say the word menopause, you could see the men flinch.
Yeah.
And I'm like, listen, honey, nobody goes through menopause alone. You're going to feel it. At one point I was in an office and the air conditioning had gone out and one of the women called maintenance to come fix the air conditioning. And they probably said something like, we'll be there tomorrow. Whatever. And I could hear her yelling into the phone, there are menopausal women in this office. And I thought, that says it right there.
Oh my God.
It's like, we are all going to suffer if you don't get here right now. You are going to suffer the most. And so, but there are two things in that story. One is, it's like, aha, funny, and so we can laugh at the old crones, you know. But also that there's this taboo in talking about women's health.
Yeah.
Because we don't
it's
talk
like,
about those
it's
things.
like, ha ha, funny, but no, we're serious.
No, because this affects us.
Right.
Now, I want to say something before I forget about this idea that, number one, nobody talks about it, but also there's no research on it because we're such a small subset. I think that subset's going to change because I was like at the front of Title IX. So Title IX essentially came into effect when I was in high school. And then I went to college. I ran track in college. I ran varsity track in college. And it still had not trickled down to us. Mm-hmm. Like I bought my own uniform and, we got to use the men's weight room when they weren't using it, that kind of thing. And we got, I think, like $5 a day for food, for travel money. I mean, it was wow. Title IX had not caught up to women's sports. The effect of that was there were not that many female athletes. I was on the track team, not because I had run track through high school. I would jog every morning because I just enjoyed running.
Right.
And the women's cross-country program was so small at the time that one of the members of the team was in the same dorm and she knew I ran and she said, go try out for the team. We need a fifth person. And I was like, I've never run on a sports team. But I went and I walked in, this was in late spring, and I walked into the coach's office and I said, so-and-so said I should come by and talk to you about, running cross-country for Texas Tech. She looked at me and she said, well, you look like a runner, because I was real skinny. And she said, here's a workout for the summer. If you can come back and keep up with the workouts in the fall, you're on the team. So I did, and I did. The young girls who are running track now are going to be driving this research in the future because they're not going to quit. They're going to be going, no, that's fun.
Yeah.
I want to keep doing that. Yeah. I don't want to stop doing that. I wish I could remember how I ran across Stacy Sims. But boy, when I did, I started telling everybody that I knew that was my age.
I'm glad that you told me about her because, I mean, I've already sent her info to like several friends.
Yeah.
And again, it's not that we want to be Olympic athletes. It's just that we don't want to stop.
We don't want to stop
what
having
we love to do. Yes.
And part of the fun is being good at it. And so I understand.
Or challenging yourself.
Or getting better, or improving this little thing, or improving that little thing. I know I couldn't beat my 22-year-old self, right? I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in okay, I'm going to set this challenge.
Yep.
You know what I'm doing right now? I'll tell you two things I'm doing. The first one is three things. The first one is, Strava has these things called segments. And so like a route in your town that goes up a hill, everybody who's on Strava is going up that hill and recording their time, right? Okay. And so you have the person who is the king of the mountain or the queen of the mountain who has the best time. And that's always a young person. Okay, whatever. But they also have age groups. So one of my soft goals, actually it's not a soft goal, it is a goal.
I was going to say, the way you're talking about it, I wouldn't call it a soft goal.
I not only want to own every age group, queen of the mountain for every one of the hills, the tiny little hills in Lubbock. I want to set a record with stand for all time, right? Which I know it won't because I know this wave is coming behind me. And they will have resources to keep going all the way.
I just came across this podcast this morning with Dr. Stacy Sims. And one of the things that she says is that if you just found her and are reading her recommendations for nutritional changes and things like that, it's not too late to put it to use and have it be effective. It's because sometimes I feel like I'm already behind. I've screwed this up because I'm just figuring this out. But one of the things she says is it's not too late. Just dive in wherever you are.
It's like my example of just how immediately it affected me to not be riding fasted.
Yeah.
And to refuel immediately after, just within a week, I'm better.
Yeah.
And I don't have that sort of strange feeling of tissue tearing, that I was having.
So are you doing some of the exercises that she recommends too, or are you?
No, I have my own. So
what do you do?
I have some PT exercises for my hips. because I had bone spurs in one of my hips, and it tore my labrum about 4 years ago, and I had to have surgery for that. So I have PT exercises that I do for that, for strength, and then I do push-ups. And then that's pretty much what I do for strength exercises. And I do a lot of stretching, try to stay stretched.
Do you have certain goals? Like when you do push-ups, do you like push yourself to do so many in a certain amount of time, or do you just do them?
I just do them, and I'm sort of gradually, because I started doing counter push-ups, and then I dropped down to the edge of a bedstead, and now I'm down to like a certain level on my stairs, like, so the goal is to get down to pushing,
doing
full body weight off the floor. And so I do 10, because she talks in her book about, skip the lightweight reps and do heavy weights.
Yes.
And so it's like 10, if I can do 10 and it's hard and I'm pushing to failure, or near failure, then I'm getting the workout I need.
Right.
So I'm gradually stepping that up and enjoying it. It's a lot of fun. What I'm doing has to be fun, and that's why I'm doing it.
Right.
Because it's fun, and that's why I want to keep doing it. So it's like, if I can work up to 20 push-ups off the floor.
Yeah. I like what she says about taking all the recovery time you need, like between sets even. She was like, because you do these 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off or whatever. And most of the time I'm not ready to start running again after 10 seconds. And she says at one point, don't worry about it. Take longer recovery. What's important is that you're doing all out.
You are pushing yourself. You are, and that was something else that I took away from her book, is because I was like, don't want to go in the red. It's like, no, go into the red. Not all the time. Yeah. But that's the point. And so I do that on the bike, but I'm not doing sprints. I go up hills, because a hill can put you in the red.
Right.
And so go hard up the hill. Yeah. Go hard up the hill. So about twice a week I try to do hills. And then I'm doing gravel riding out at Lubbock Lake Landmark, and they have some hills and so on. And I try to get out of breath on those hills. So I took that away from her book. It's like, I'm not pushing myself hard enough. I can do this. Yeah. And so don't shy away from it.
She talks about protein being one of the things. And
it's more protein than they it's a lot. It's a lot of protein.
It's like, she says 35 to 40 grams
it's a lot of protein. Yeah.
Yeah, which to me, I cringe just a little bit, because I have issues with kidney stones, and protein is one of the things that can cause certain types of kidney stones.
And I, for the same reason, because kidney disease runs in my family, so she recommends supplements in there, and I don't do supplements because those are hard on the kidneys. It's like yogurt and nuts and things like that.
Right.
So she's specific about your protein recovery meal needs to include a specific kind of protein, like leucine. And she talked about chicken and yogurt and things like this, because that will stop the catabolic state. It will feed what your body's asking for, and it will not be robbing it from your muscle. I get like just one of those little cups of yogurt, and I put in chocolate chips, because I love chocolate chips. And then I put in pecans, because I love pecans. I should probably put walnuts in there, because pecans are almost a trash food. But pecans in there, and then I just eat that, and it's like a treat. So because I hate yogurt, but it's like, no, this is a treat. So I do that just like instantly. Just get off the bike. I am still in my kit. I just scoop it down, and it really has made a difference.
I'm definitely going to try that. And like, as I'm preparing for this backpacking season, I'm really starting to try to look more closely at the foods that I'm packing. Yeah. And it's hard, because you can't pack yogurt when you're backpacking.
No, you can't.
But there are ways to do it.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure all of that out.
I am not nutritionally obsessed, but in my mind, if I tie it to performance, then I can do it.
Right.
If it's not tied to performance, I don't really care.
You don't care.
It's like whatever.
I will eat
the pie all day long.
Chocolate.
But if I tie it to like, I am gonna own those QOM records.
Yeah.
Those age group QOM records. Now let me offer a caveat. There aren't a lot of people in my age group So it's not that right now. It's not that hard to own those records,
Yeah,
So,
but do you set? I mean, you set goals against yourself. Though,
I do.
Right. Like I'm really competitive when it comes to setting goals against myself.
No.
I'm not so competitive when it comes to other people.
No,
I don't care about.
But it's
what
a fun
other people are doing.
competition that way,
Yeah.
right? And so I already have many of the records, but now it's a new season, So now I've got to better the records because I want to own them forever, So I know when I'm saying this is this is just silly. Because of course I'm not
though, but it's not.
But it's not in the sense that it's motivating me. But it is silly in the sense that when I was on the track team, I was middle of the pack, which I think actually ended up benefiting me long term. There are people who are much more gifted than I am, and they're coming up behind me, and I know that. And as long as they don't get bored or burned out, they are coming for me. But that's kind of what I mean about, I think it benefited me to be middle of the pack when I was a varsity athlete. I had no pressure on me. I showed up in the coach's office and she thought I was skinny and might be able to run, So I had no pressure on me. So I never went through any kind of a burnout thing because nobody expected me to do anything good.
Yeah.
And I think that in the long run, I was able to keep just the absolute pure joy.
Yeah, it makes a difference.
Yeah, and plus all of my goals were, as you say, personal goals. Mm-hmm. It's like I want to better this time or I want to better that time.
When I got out of the Army, I basically had to relearn how to run.
Yeah.
Because, and I don't mean like form, I mean just to have fun at it. Because in the Army, you have to have a certain time in order to stay in.
Yeah.
It was just stressful. So you had to do a 2-mile run for the PT test, and you had to make a certain time. And of course, the older you get, the harder that gets to make. I mean, they lower the standards, but it's still hard.
Yeah.
And so it was so stressful for me. And when I got out, I very, very deliberately tried to reapproach running just for the fun of it. And oh my God, it was hard.
Yeah.
It was hard to not look at my watch and say, I'm way over my time.
Yeah.
And then I'd have to catch myself and just say, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't
How do you
matter.
feel?
Just
How do you
run.
feel when you're running?
Yeah.
And I think I retained, of course, if you have a long layoff and you're trying to get back into shape, it's hell no matter what.
Right.
You're just going to feel like crap for, a month.
You just got to endure
You're
the
just
suck.
you're going to feel bad.
Yeah.
Right. But to this day, I never lost the sense of just the pure joy of motion, how it feels to move well, that your body is doing the thing it was designed to do.
Right.
Whether that's on a bike or in the pool or running or whatever, your body is designed to move. I can't count the number of times when I was working as an acting team, the bike saved my life because I, was under a lot of stress and I would get on my bike and the first half hour I'd just be like,
yeah.
And then, by the time I get home, I'm thinking,
yep. Yeah.
When you start moving the way your body wants to move, that's a gift because I am fully aware there are people who can't do that.
Right.
I really became aware of that when I had my hip injury. I was so miserable, not because I was in pain, but because I couldn't move.
Right.
It was a long recovery. I was not allowed to put any weight on it. So it was essentially 6 weeks on my back. It was so depressing.
I get emotional thinking about not being able to backpack, not being able to go out into the mountains. That's what motivates me.
I would not be active if I didn't set little strange challenges and goals and so on. And I have a number of them. And they don't mean anything to anybody but me. I'll never get medals for them or anything like that. But they motivate me to get on the bike. And then when I'm on the bike, I feel so good. Number one, I'm grateful for the fact that physically I can do this. Number two, I'm supremely grateful that early in my life, like in elementary school, I discovered I loved to move and that I never lost that. And I'm grateful I was mediocre so that I never got burned out.
You never lost the joy in it.
I never lost what the joy was. The joy was not winning. The joy was moving. Right? And to this day, the joy is still moving. I mean, if I get the QOM, that's great. If I don't, it's not going to bother me. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. the joy is moving, and I never lost that. And I find so many people who will say, like, I hate exercise. And I go, I do too. I don't exercise.
Yeah.
I don't exercise. That's not what I'm doing. When I'm eating nutritionally, I'm not dieting. I am fueling for the performance.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's a totally different mindset.
And it's interesting to hear you talk about it, because you consider it play and not
play.
exercise, but yet you take it seriously.
Oh, I take it very seriously. But that's part of the play.
Yeah.
Right? That's like playing Monopoly. If you're going to play Monopoly, you're either going to try to win or you're not going to try to win.
Right.
But everybody understands it's a game.
Yeah.
So it is completely play, but it's also, I take it really seriously, and I take the training seriously, and I have benchmarks that I try to hit. But I also don't take it so seriously that if I don't hit the benchmarks, it's not
going to ruin your day.
It's not. I'll just find a different benchmark.
Right.
That's how that works.
Yeah.
See,
and I need to get to that point, because I'm still at the point now where, like, I was diagnosed with exercise-induced asthma late in life. It's hard for me to acknowledge that I can't do what I used to. I'm still in that phase.
And I can understand that, because, I was a runner all my life until my hip injury. And I could probably start running again now. And in fact, the other day I was thinking, I should just lace on some shoes and see what happens. Because I love the motion of running.
Yeah.
But I was left with a limp, and just a real subtle one, probably not one that anybody could see, but I could feel it, and I worried about that causing other injuries. So I stopped, and that's when I hopped on the bike seriously and transitioned to that. And at first the transition was hard because it wasn't running.
Right.
And I missed running. I still miss running. The thing I miss most about running, though, was running in road races, because I liked bringing home those medals. But, and which got easier every year, because, like I said, the older you get, the fewer people there are in my age category, which I'm fine with that, because I'm still standing. That's how I look at it. It's
right.
Like, I'm going to be the last woman standing. I'm going to be the one that they're taking a picture of in the New York Times article saying, and at 100, she's
the only one in her age group.
She's the only woman in her age group in this category. Their age groups, though, like the ones that we're talking about, is like 80 to 100. I don't know. That's a wide range.
Really. That means they don't expect anybody.
I know. They're just like, somebody show up. Right. Well, but like I said, the wave's coming. And so I think that we will see that in the future, where there will just be more and more of the people who are like us, who are like, I'm not stopping.
Yeah.
And not only am I not stopping, it is never going to be exercise to me. It's always going to be performance.
Yeah.
Because the performance is the play.
Yeah.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
That's awesome. Did you ever have like a female role model?
In being physically active?
Yeah.
No. Because, again, there weren't that many.
Yeah.
So I was sort of my own. Sometimes I'll talk to people about some of my goals, and they'll go, oh, you can do it. There's this, 90-year-old nun who completes Ironmans, or whatever. And I'll go, you know what? There are always exceptional people, and I am not exceptional. Again, I think
I don't know. I would beg to differ. But,
but this is my point. It's like, this is where I think I was helped by being middle of the pack.
Yeah.
I am not exceptional. I understand that. I accept that. My goals are for me, and it's all about play, and the performance is related to how well I do, and not related
but maybe like we should normalize that.
Yeah, but that's where I was going with this, is like, maybe we don't need role models per se. We just need more of us.
Right.
We need more peers and colleagues and companions who are doing the same thing. We are each other's role models in that respect.
Yeah,
it's like,
absolutely.
There are people who've been exceptional since day one.
Yeah.
I'm not, but I'm exceptional in the sense of I am an N of one.
Yeah.
And you are too, and that's okay.